And it reminded me of my hatred for flossing. And
Hello and welcome to episode 68 of Rockstar CMO FM. The M is for marketing and the F is well you decide. As you're probably wondering, does the world need another effing marketing podcast? I'm your host Ian Truscott, and this podcast serves as my excuse to chat with marketing friends old and new that I've met through my career as a senior marketer and trusted advisor, and hopefully through these conversations share some marketing street knowledge that'll bring out the Rockstar CMO in you. Come say hello. We are Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. This episode was recorded on Friday the 25th of June. I hope you've had a good week and you are well, safe, and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. This week, I'm joined by Rockstar CMO advisor Jeff Clark as we continue to discuss brand purpose. I'm delighted to chat to a listener, Julia Bennett, the brand new CMO at global law firm Brown Rudnick, and of course, I will round off the week with my friend and content marketing guru Robert Rose for a chat and a cocktail. Right, let's get started, shall we? On to our first segment. As regular listeners know, Jeff Clark is a former research director at SiriusDecisions and Forrester, and is now a Rockstar CMO advisor. And this week, we continue to discuss brand purpose, specifically the buzzword of being innovative. Hello, Jeff. Welcome back to Rockstar CMO FM. How are you?
I am doing very well. We're having absolutely beautiful summer weather here in the state of Massachusetts.
Very nice, very nice. Yes, we've got one of our lovely summer grey days today in that it's warm, but it's grey. So we have all sorts of different... I mean, the Inuit may have many words for snow, but I think we should invent many words for grey.
That's right. Yes. And I was going to say, I remember being transferred to... Not transferred, but doing a stint in the UK, arriving in July 5th.
Yeah.
And I was like, what happened to summer?
Yeah.
It did come in August, but not in July.
No, I think we had ours in April. No, we've had some good weather, but it's just today is great. And also, your absence was noticed. I noticed on LinkedIn that
gone just a couple weeks, and it's like, wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I'm glad we have a fan or fans.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. So it's good to have you back, mate. You're obviously the most popular aspect of this show, aside from later on when I get to some gin.
Yeah, really, I can't get more popular in cocktails.
All right, so this is our second dip into the topic of brand purpose. We started off last week. I think we were planning on 3 of these, so this will be the middle one. Now, one of the things that we were discussing around brand purpose, and particularly as we're both from the background of B2B tech, every vendor is innovative. It's in everybody's brand purpose that they're innovative. And that. So what is the purpose of being innovative, Jeff? Why does everybody need to be innovative in their brand purpose?
Well, I am glad you asked that because innovation is just, and this we may even dig more into this into session 3 on the topic, because it has become one of the more overused terms in business, and certainly in B2B technology, it's more than overused. And so I did a it's like, okay, let's go to Google and see where this turns up, and I searched for most overused business terms. Mm-hmm. Innovation does turn up on number 14 on the list, and the list on a site called Simply Stated by Kathy Miller says, this used to be a great word, then it lost its innovation. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's a victim of its own success, and it has become kind of a, I don't know if you think of kind of a motherhood and apple pie cliche term. I mean, not that mothers and apple pie are cliche, but it's just like it's obviously a good thing. So we could step back from the buzzwordness and think about well, what is really the importance of it? And I mean, it just purely by definition, it is, you're trying to do something that's new, something that is more cost effective, efficient, all those great terms that we would talk about to our clients about how we're going to improve the way they conduct their business. And so, so from that perspective, this follows along the lines of discussion we've had about a lot of certainly purpose last week and before, just talking about the role of marketers, understanding how to communicate to customers, create appropriate content and stuff like that. Is that innovation? I mean, if you're trying to solve a problem for a client, a challenge, they've got a need. Okay, now let's drill into that need. How are different ways we can understand the need, and how can we talk about it as relative to how we, as the company providing a product or service, are actually supplying, the solution to that need. So, once you've determined kind of what the needs of a set of customers are, then you can, and then the purpose of your organization, then you can kind of dig into a little bit about how are we the first company to address this? How are we the best at doing it? Or, best at a certain price point or cost of ownership? Are we the only ones who figured this out? And so, that's to an extent, it's like with a lot of cliche terms, you want to overuse the term. You want to dig more into the substance of what you're trying to do.
So that suggests to me that, it's very tempting to just describe yourself as innovative. It's the same as in, B2B tech. I think we overuse words like we're the leading vendor, or we're the most innovative, we're the easiest to use, we're all of those things, right?
Yeah. We're the leader in a niche market that if I define the niche market, that's like only so big.
but and you're talking about what the customer needs. Now, do customers need every vendor in the market to be innovative? I mean, are they looking for innovation?
So yes, and again, we don't want to overuse the term, but we do want to say that every customer has something that they're, we're trying to fill a gap that they've got. And obviously if we can't fill that gap, we're not likely to be successful. And so, you just, think back to, I mean, there's sort of the classic innovations around, the automobile supplanted the horse and buggy, or, we worked at a company that was doing automated language translation. It was largely getting supplanted by big companies like a Google, who could do it bigger, better, faster. Or, I'm tracking a lot of things going on in the renewable energy business. And so solar energy, production of solar panels is making it cheaper, easier, more cost effective to produce power than oil, gas, coal. So, it's like when you think about the innovation is that, and the needs of the customer, is that you got to be thinking about certainly the needs they have today, but how market dynamics may be changing what they need and how they're going to solve that problem in the future. So you not only want to be able to communicate directly about how you can solve the challenge today, but this is where another buzzword comes in: thought leadership. The thought leadership part is continually helping the customers to talk about their needs, but where those needs are going. So where do we see, whether it's because of competitors doing different things, whether it's because of like what I was saying about solar cells, is that there's just a lot about the manufacturing process that makes things cheaper. That's like, oh, all of a sudden we've got a different market dynamic. So now we can do the same thing, produce power in an entirely different way.
Right. So when you're talking about customer need, then it's about trust. Then it's about building trust that you can't just say that you're innovative. It's like somebody describing themselves as cool. It's a label that needs to be built on by trust, that you've proven that you are innovative. So you're saying that the customer does need you to be innovative, or at least demonstrate that you're up with the latest that's going on and that you understand what's going on. But saying you're innovative isn't sufficient. You need to demonstrate that. Is that what you're saying there? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the world is dynamic, and people know the world is dynamic. I mean, we live in a world where we not only are experiencing change, but we acknowledge that change is, it's the cliche. The only constant is change. So we understand that, and so that's where it's important to, for the customer to understand that you understand them, and you're communicating to them, and you're helping them. I mean, some of the companies that I've been working or we've been working in, it's kind of like, how do we, project that we can actually help you, determine what your roadmap's going to be? What are the next things you need to buy? What's the, in your IT environment, how's that going to evolve? Because we've got all of these threats that are coming at us that we didn't think about 5 years ago. So, like today, a firewall today is people have a different concept or of the challenges of having security and firewalls up today than they do, even 3 years ago. So,
but you were then talking about the fact that we need to be in touch with the customers, and you also mentioned the innovation around the automobile. So that means that I can't resist using the hackneyed quote from Henry Ford that said that his customers, if he'd asked them, would have asked for a faster horse. They wouldn't ask for a car. So sometimes when you're expressing your innovation, is it always going to be what the customer needs or what the customer thinks they need?
So you're trying to help them along on a journey, right? So you're trying to, if you boil down what the customer needed in that particular case, you'd say the customer needs a way to get around, right? And they want a faster way to get around, or they don't want it to poop as much, right? Whatever the problem is, because I remember, people talking about the cities, the streets of the cities of New York and Chicago were just a mess because everybody was using horses to get around, and that the automobile was thought to be clean. Well, now we think of the automobile as being dirty. So what's the clean alternative? And so it is where you need to be intimate with the customer, but you need to understand the market dynamics and what's going on around it, and be clear that you're providing a more basic need than I'm providing a horse, a buggy, or I'm providing a car, or I'm providing, or like the utility saying I'm providing power. And the only way I know how to do it is oil, gas, coal, blah blah. It's like, well, you need to be thinking about where the world's going, the market dynamics are going, the fact that customers are starting to perceive the way that they want power in a different way than they did in the past. So, get ahead of that.
This is going back to some real marketing fundamentals, though, isn't it? I mean, when I started my marketing education, Robert Rose, who's on the show, recommended that I read Theodore Levitt and Marketing Myopia. And what he talks about is the death of the railway industry, because the railway companies thought they were in the railway industry, and what they were in was the transportation industry. And if they'd have realized that, then they would have seen the threat of the roads and the airplane and all of those things, and they would have adapted to what their customers actually needed. So is that what you're saying here, is that the innovation needs to be in the context of not what you do, but how you help your client, your customers? Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And I think, your railroad example is a great one, because certainly we still have railroads with us. But, it has become, particularly in the United States, has become a very stale industry where, they're not thinking about the new ways of providing their service to clients, or their whether it's regulations or something is hemming them in. Maybe, which is certainly true, like in the utility business, you've got people who grew up, in a certain era. They're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. They're not attracting new talent, thinking about new ways. And it's interesting because I saw a proposal. I've been tracking transportation issues in our state, and there are one of the commuter train companies, actually came up with an idea of, electronic cars that use the same rails that go at a much more higher frequency to move people around in more of an automated way, using the same rail system. And I was like, I heard that. I was like, oh my gosh, as somebody who used to commute from outside Boston into the city, It's like if I had a more convenient, even if it was something that you could call up like an Uber app saying, I'm here in Newburyport, Massachusetts, and want to get to Boston. Zoom, up comes a car, and zoom off you. It's like that's innovation.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you look at the Hyperloop thing that's happened in California, right? With Richard Branson and Virgin. Hopefully I've got all that correct. It is Virgin. I think they're behind that. If you can imagine that the people in the railway industry, I don't know how much of that stuff is brand new tech that could only be done today, but surely there's an awful lot of innovation that could have been applied in those industries earlier on.
Absolutely. And they wouldn't have fallen prey to the competition of the automobile, et cetera.
Yeah. So from the perspective of back to our conversation about brand purpose. So if I'm building a brand purpose, it's clear that innovation, or at least being in touch with the zeitgeist of the problem that I'm trying to solve and where that might be going, is important, right? So would you say that every brand in their brand purpose needs to have an element of innovation in that?
Absolutely. And I think from a purpose of what the marketer role in that, I mean, that's where, again, we were talking about intimacy with a customer, understanding, what their how they observe needs, putting things in front of them to get feedback. And so, I mean, I think we've all been in companies where, sometimes you test the waters with customer advisory boards or voice of the customer programs or customer advocacy, and they often appear to be, nice things to do.
Mm-hmm.
But in really, I think they are necessary things to do, because it's part of marketing's role in the ability to, be a feedback loop. Not only just help to project where the market is going, because you're listening to customers talk, but be that feedback loop. Your sales can be that feedback loop, because they're getting asked questions. They're having personal discussions with customers. And so it's very important for, the product functions and the fiscal functions of an organization to be listening to that, as opposed to being, just, let's try to squeeze more profitability. Let's try to get the most out and sell the most for the least expense, and blah, blah, blah. And then, certainly American car companies in the 60s and 70s became, victims of that. And, there's some great books on that topic about how they just so focused on profitability, not thinking where the customers were going and what they needed to do to provide
So we as marketers, we need to try and weave in innovation into our messaging. We need to listen to our customers to understand where the direction the company is going now. And also, I've been in the B2B tech industry for an awful long time, and I have seen trends where a trend has been developed by the vendor community and by the analysts and by the goldfish bowl, if you like. This is where the industry is running. I mean, web content management was going to be dead about 15 times in the last 20 years, right? But people still buy web content management solutions, and there are there'll be a startup that's probably happening that's been open for a few months that we'll find that we've never heard of. That's a new way. They're probably headless, new way of doing these things. So how do you break out of your industry goldfish bowl like that? Because you're used to trusting the analysts, you're used to trusting your customers and your colleagues and other people that talk around your industry. How do you break out of that and really understand where this category you're in is really going?
So I think that is where some of the things that I had just mentioned about, like a customer advisory board or a voice of the customer program, really helps ground ground you, because it's because, again, you can say, we heard this great thing from Gartner, Forrester, and we're thinking of positioning our product, a certain way, or we're adding this functionality, and you've got to really press to say, what's the value of this to you, and are we barking up the right tree, so to speak, and just try to ground yourself in reality. And you always got to I mean, everybody has to always step back and say, am I as cool as I think I am, or and be honest about it.
You're getting your customers ready to call bullshit on some of these ideas that you might have, and they're going to say, no, that's not what we need at all. We need this. But then sometimes I think we get caught up in it, don't we? We get caught up in the shiny ball syndrome, and it's actually we want to do the shiny ball, and it doesn't matter what they say. we want to be over here. We want to be. So that's really interesting. Thank you very much, Jeff. So brand purpose, innovation needs to be part of that, but it needs to be grounded in voice of the customer, which is what we've said I think on almost every show. Yep. And we need to prove it through our thought leadership that we know where our category is going, and we need to think about our broader category and the thing that we're doing to our customer, not just the product we provide. Is that neatly summarized where we are? I couldn't
have said it better myself. I think I'll just leave it right there.
Well, I'm trying to. And are we still feeling that we're heroes?
Yes.
Last week, yes, we are. So I'll play out with heroes.
That's our aspiration, is to really be heroes.
Excellent. Yes. All right, Jeff. Well, and will you join me next week for the third part? I hope you do.
Sure, absolutely.
Excellent. All right, I'll speak to you then. Cheers, mate. Bye-bye.
I wish you could swim like dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. Or we can be heroes just for one day.
Thank you, Jeff. And a bit more heroes from David Bowie there. Let us know what you think of brand purpose, or maybe you have a topic you'd like us to discuss. You know where to find us. We're Rockstar CMO on Twitter and LinkedIn. And of course, I'll include all of Jeff's links in the show notes. Right, on to this week's guest. I've been saying at the end of the last few episodes that next week our guest will be Julia Bennett, the brand new CMO of global law firm Brown Rudnick. Well, finally we got our schedules aligned and the technology worked, and here she is. As the Chief Marketing Officer, Julia Bennett leads Brown Rudnick's business development, marketing, public relations and communications strategies and initiatives for the firm's offices worldwide. Julia is a trained lawyer, and before joining Brown Rudnick, Julia was the Senior Director of Business Development at a major law firm, overseeing the business development and sales enablement, client expansion, research and competitive intelligence teams. I hope you enjoy this conversation. I certainly did. Hello, Julia. Welcome to Rockstar CMO FM, finally.
Yes, finally. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, you're welcome. And I'm actually having you twice because I have to confess we had a bit of a problem with the recording last time. So thank you for rejoining. Yes, and I've been promising the listeners this conversation for the last couple of weeks. So here you are. So that's excellent.
Yes, right. Perfect. Hopefully I will not disappoint.
No, exactly. Well, I'm sure you won't. So, Julia, for people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I am currently the Chief Marketing Officer newly appointed for Brown Rudnick, which is a global law firm helping all kinds of business clients with all manner of legal issues. Prior to that, I was Senior Director of Business Development at another large law firm. And before that, I was a practicing attorney, so I sort of come by it honestly.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw that you were educated in law, so that's a circuitous route for a marketer, isn't it? Coming from a law background.
It definitely is. You know, I think I probably caught the bug as an associate, helping partners put together pitches, and then frankly working directly with clients, and found I liked, working with them and growing the business maybe better than I liked actually doing the work. So.
Right. Yeah. And I got to congratulate you. You recently appeared in a law magazine, didn't you, for joining? Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. The American Lawyer, which is probably the trade publication for law firms in the U.S., covered my move to Brown Rudnick, along with many other great CMOs who've made moves into law firms recently.
Yeah, no, that was. I thought that was great coverage. So you're educated in law, and what inspired? So you went into business development. You were saying. So is that what inspired you to get into marketing?
It is, in law firms, business development is probably not a good term. It's probably really better called sales enablement because the laws, particularly here, restrict non-lawyers from actually going out and getting clients. But we do help our partners with marketing strategy. We lend a hand on marketing materials and content and things like that and help them get ready to actually pitch. So you're almost working on a continuum when you're working in business development.
Right. So did you need to be a lawyer in order to do business development, or you were enabling lawyers to develop their own businesses?
We're enabling lawyers. There are many, many people who work in business development in law firms who are not lawyers, but certainly being a lawyer helps me understand what is going on. With the clients as well as the partners.
And what's the key challenge there? Because I can imagine that you're kind of helping somebody who perhaps doesn't have your same passion for sales and marketing to do sales and marketing. How do you find that coaching lawyers to add that sort of string to their bow?
It's funny. I like to say I'm a wing woman. I'm there to, help people feel confident and pump them up, but also really to be the voice for the client. And to help people to remember that even though we're business to business, we're also human to human, especially in law, because we're really providing our expertise and, personal services. So it's, making sure people are thinking about what the individual hiring them might care about and not just, the stats on the sheet of what the expert is and what the product is, so to say. Right.
Okay. So, and that's what you find your transition is to turn the thing that you're selling into something that's meaningful and useful for the customer that's buying.
Yeah, that's right. And helping people make an emotional connection really from one person to another person. That's what I think distinguishes lawyers.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because, your space, I'm a B2B marketer, which I guess you're B2B as well. But for me, it's all technology and stuff. And I'm usually translating technical features and functions into business ideas. And it sounds like that's very similar for you. You're translating law effectively into how that can help someone.
Yeah, that's right. I like to say that businesses have business problems and law is the vehicle to solve those problems. And the expertise really comes from the human beings. So you have to understand the business in order to help solve the problem using law as the tool.
Right. And coming from a business development perspective and transferring into as a marketer, I think that's a good background for a lot of marketers. What did that teach you about business development and now to move into marketing?
Sure. What's interesting is that when you're doing business development, you hear right away what was effective and what was not, what marketing tactics were impactful, what things people didn't think about or look at, and really quickly whether you won or not and why. And so it allows you to really quickly pivot back to updating or changing whatever your marketing strategy was, or freshening things to make them more impactful. I think it's a perfect translation from business development to marketing.
Yeah, well, that's that connection with the customer, isn't it? Because if you're on the front line doing business development, you're talking to the customer every day, and there's a lot of conversation. We have this conversation on the podcast quite often about the fact that marketers don't talk to customers enough, so they lose that connection. Is that what you think you've earned there? Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's funny. We were having a conversation yesterday about marketing brochures. And some partners really love marketing brochures. And someone said to me offline, like, I don't think people really read them. And I said, my experience is that by the time you get into the room, people aren't really reading them. No. So how do we make them something people look at where they can get what they need? Or how do we have the confidence not to come in with them? It's those little pivots that you get when you're on the front line and you can communicate back. It just makes the marketing more effective.
Yeah, and it's interesting because sales guys tend to be creatures of habit in that way, and they want the brochure because they've always had the brochure. It's almost like a crutch or
it's a security blanket.
Yeah, and they've always got that, and they can leaf through it or leave it, and and like you say, the customer probably just like puts it on the
Right.
side, never touches it, but that transaction was done. And so, so that's interesting. So it's that connection with the customer that you learn from being business development, which I think a lot of marketers have learned. But you've recently, as we said at the beginning, become a CMO. So what advice would you give to other folks? And that's what this show is all about. Would you give to other folks becoming a CMO?
Sure. So I would say it's important to stay aligned with the business and stay aligned with the client who, or the customer, depending on what your business is.
Yeah.
It's easy for all of us to get wrapped up into our marketing tactics, and we can, see who's looking and reading, and we get that instant gratification. But you really have to keep your ear to the ground and be able to translate for the marketers. And for me, that's what I find is serving me well.
And so that's really understanding what the law firm needs in terms of revenue, is that? And in terms of the clients you need to onboard and stuff?
Yep. In terms of revenue, and frankly, just looking down the pike and seeing what kinds of legal issues are coming up, what kinds of things, frankly, our clients haven't even thought of, and making sure you're flagging them. And then speaking that business language, but then turning your marketing language back on when you're with your marketing tribe, so to speak.
Right. And in your law firm, is it like new areas of practice open up, or new opportunities open up in the market, and then you've got to be alive to that as a marketer, that like, we now offer this service, or we think there's going to be something coming along, I don't know, some change in the law that we need to be all ready for, because there'll be consumer demand for that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, if you think about COVID, now all of a sudden everybody's got to get expert on how to get out of leases, for example, or, how to treat employees who, may be sick or may not. What can you ask them? What can't you ask them? And those are whole new areas of law that were sort of unexplored. And we have to be at the forefront of that.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up COVID, because you were hired during COVID, right?
Yes,
so how did that process go for you?
It was all on Zoom, which was very funny. It's like you have one screen for your day job and one screen that you interview in. And I've still not met many people, because we're just sort of starting to get back to it. But it's a very different experience, and there has to be a lot of trust there, right? To go into something where you haven't actually physically met the people. Yeah.
And where are you based? You're in DC, aren't you?
Yep. So I'm based in DC. Our firm is Boston based.
Right.
London is probably our largest office.
Right.
And so I have people who work with me on my team all across the world, none of whom I have met in person. And so, it's
How
definitely
exciting.
an experiment. Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it sounds like we might see you in London then at some point.
Hopefully soon, fingers crossed. I know restrictions keep getting pushed. And so we're saying like, maybe in the fall now.
Yeah. So we just were talking about the advice you'd give to aspiring CMOs, and I think it's interesting being hired during the pandemic. I think it's a unique situation, isn't it, that you just shared about what you need to do. What advice were you given when you decided to pick this up? Did you have a good support around you? Did you get some good advice to moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. And I have to say, lots of CMOs just reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I saw this, or I heard this. Congratulations. I'm here if you need me. I think the best advice, to the point about employees, was to just jump right in with my team, roll up my sleeves and get in on projects, and let that be the vehicle to learn them, and not try to be too formal with it. And that I think has been great advice.
Right. So just jump in with your team. And have you found that being a lawyer helps you? You've got that subject matter expertise already in place. So have you got a little bit of an advantage being a CMO of a law firm because you've got that background, or what do you think?
I think I do. I understand all the legalese because I was trained on it. I think people trust my opinion because I've had to be the person who had to go in front of the client or get their work done. And I understand the nuance there. And then frankly, my network is lawyers. So I can get that feedback right away.
Yeah. So you've got credibility both internally and externally. So you can tell a story and it's credible because you're a lawyer yourself.
Yep, I'd like to think so. Yeah.
That sounds excellent. Well, I'm gonna move on to our final. So that would be the advice you give to aspiring CMOs. So I'm going to move on to our final question, our regular feature, the Rockstar CMO Swimming Pool, our pool to hell for all the BS, snake oil, and overhyped trends in this industry that we love. What would you throw in that?
So, I was thinking about this a lot, and just this week, maybe because I was thinking about marketing brochures,
Yeah.
the phrase efficient and effective, I feel, is probably on every law firm's website or in every law firm's brochure. And we
Yeah.
all say we're efficient and effective. And I wish we could just sort of strike it from the canon.
Yeah. But that's it. That's just that phrase you want to get rid of.
Yeah, let's just put a moratorium on it or something. It's become table stakes, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know if it's distinguishing anymore, but we all have the habit, right, as
Yeah.
content writers, of putting that in there.
Yeah.
And I think we need to pause it.
I think that's really interesting because I think every industry has something like that. I mean, in the B2B industry, every vendor is leading. We're all leading
Right.
vendors, and we're all, and all of that stuff. So what would you do instead? What do you think that people need to do instead if you're relying on these business speak tropes that are in our industries? What advice do you give to marketers when they try and break out of that language?
Sure. I would say throw away the legalese or whatever that language is. Just write as a human being, and be willing to be transparent and honest about why. So in this case, if we say we're efficient and effective at Brown Rudnick, what we say is we are small relative to our peers. We're purposely lean so that we can work at the same speed as our clients. To me, that communicates so much more than efficient and effective.
Right. Right.
And it shows that there's a human being and a reasoning behind why we describe ourselves the way we are.
Right. So it's about finding is it finding the customer's language for saying the same thing and how they would think about you?
I do think that's also true. That's a good point. I mean, I recently taught my attorneys who work with tech companies to say sales enablement, right?
Yeah,
and they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm like, right, that's probably the language your clients have been using forever.
Yeah.
Pivot into that and lean into that. I think it adds some credibility too. And it's just easier to understand.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. Yes. And so it's fantastic that we got you on the show, and for the second time we're trying, and I've managed to record something, which is wonderful. If people were to spin the dial on the interwebs, where would they find you, Julia?
Right now, LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. I love to connect with people and learn more.
Yeah.
So certainly reach out. Let me know you heard me on the podcast.
Yeah. And as a listener yourself, thank you very much for listening. And I look forward to speaking to you soon. I'll obviously include links to you and your firm in the show notes, and to the article where you were featured by the American Lawyer. So I'll do that too. And so
my parents will love that. They're very proud.
I can imagine. Who wouldn't be? Well done. And thank you very much for being on the show. And I'll speak to you very soon, Julia. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye. Thank you, Julia. Well, that was worth the wait. And it was an absolute pleasure to chat to another listener and some great advice for new CMOs, especially if you're starting a new job remotely during a pandemic. Right, it's that time of the week. It's Friday evening and time to find out where my friend and content marketing guru Robert Rose would like to transport us to for a marketing thought and a cocktail in the Rockstar CMO virtual bar. Good evening, Robert. What are you drinking?
Oh, hello, my friend. Welcome to the bar. It's so good to see you here. Well, let's see. This week, I did all the hashtag adulting. And so I think we deserve like a double. It is one of those weeks where, you feel like you just really, really worked.
Yes.
And so I have a summer drink for us because it is summer, and it's feeling very summery. So I have what I'm calling the +1 because of all the hard work we did.
Yes.
So the +1 lemonade. So it's lemon, obviously, for the lemonade.
Yes.
A splash of orange, just because you need a little sweetness there.
Yeah.
Coconut nectar, which makes it very nice.
Yeah.
And then a little turmeric, and I know that sounds a little weird, but it's a little turmeric in there. Gives it just a little bit of a spice, and then of course a heaping serving of our favorite tequila reposado. So there you have it. That's what we're drinking tonight.
Very nice. We did get a comment on last week's drink on Twitter about all the mint that you. But I think it was Siobhan Fagan at CMS Wire, and she actually conflated both of our drinks, where she were having all the mint that you had last week with the gin that I have. So, but anyway, let me have a look at some. So it's good that we're reaching out to our audience and we're giving them drinking inspiration. So if anybody's got any comments,
yes, there you go.
So this week, my English reposado is again, I'm turning to gin. You'll be surprised to learn. But I have got a new bottle of gin this week because it was Father's Day, and my wife bought me Hendrick's Lunar Gin. It's got a very nice blue label.
I'm not familiar with that particular sub brand of Hendrick's, but yeah, there we go.
Neither was I. So this will be. It's from their Cabinet of Curiosities, apparently, according to the label. But this is going to be my first time as well. So I've just opened it.
What a perfect match, or not, as it usually is, with the drink we're having.
Yes, I think so. So nice big slug of that. Oh, did you put ice in yours?
I did. It is summertime. Yeah, we do need a bit of ice.
I've done it in the wrong order. I've put the gin in first and the ice. So people should be phoning in at this point and complaining. Right, and then all those lovely things you're putting in there, wasn't it? Coconut and lemon and orange.
Yes, a little coconut nectar, a little splash of orange, a little lemon.
Right.
I'm going to assume that you have a little cucumber and a little lemon, maybe?
Well, cucumber, yes. I leave it to the experts to blend my mixes. I don't trust myself with that. So yes, indeed. I'm sticking to the fever tree because I always think cucumber goes nicely with Hendrick's. I'm always a cucumber and Hendrick's.
Is it a cucumber? It's not like a cucumber water that you pour in there, is it?
Yes.
Or is it an actual piece of cucumber?
Well, if my desktop bar would stretch to having anything more than 2 bottles on it, and I actually had some vegetables, then yeah, I mean, if I was serving this to myself and I was somewhere other than my desk, then there would be a big lump of cucumber in this for sure, yes. But that would spoil the joke. I mean, it's got to be a gin and tonic, and if I start getting fancy with that, I'll be taking your job.
There we go. Yes, that is true.
That is delicious. That is delicious.
Excellent.
And what are we calling that?
We're calling that the +1 lemonade.
Love that. I'm not getting the lemonade, obviously, but I could drink one of these every week. That's perfect. Thank you very much. And these fine drinks that we're enjoying, our lemonade, and after all the adulting we've been doing this week. And I remember you used to talk about making the donuts, so I assume you've got lots of donuts too. Whereabouts are we going to be drinking these?
Well, I was thinking about that. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to be, here's what I was thinking. How long has it been since you've been up to Scotland?
Oh, many years. Many years.
Okay.
I went there on business, I think, quite a while ago. Yes. But I like it. I like where this is going because I think I'm actually allowed to go to Scotland. So if they'll have us, yeah.
Is that true?
I believe I can travel to Scotland, yes. There are certain parts of the country where they're not letting people into Scotland right now because of the cases of COVID they're having. So if you're in the northwest of England at the moment, I think, if you're in Manchester, Scotland doesn't want you at the moment. So I think we're all right. So, yeah.
There is a place in Scotland. So my family is from Scotland.
Oh, splendid.
And they now live, the family that's left, all my grandparents have passed, of course, but the family that's left, all my cousins and whatnot, have moved to a place that I don't know how well you know Scotland, but it's a place called Cairnaghan. And it's on the coast, and the closest thing you might be familiar with is it's just north of the Isle of Man.
Oh yes,
and
nice. Yeah.
And so it's small and it's on the coast and it's beautiful there. And I was just seeing pictures from my family on Facebook of some of the they were taking pictures from their house, which is right on the water, and there was dolphins playing, and it was nice and beautiful, and I thought that might be a nice place to spend a cool. I'm sure it's not as hot as it is here, yeah, it would be a great place for us to have these lovely summer drinks.
That sounds perfect. I mean, I imagine with you, with it being 170 degrees or something outside, that you must look upon a slightly drizzly day in Scotland as being a light relief.
Yeah, well, exactly.
That sounds wonderful.
I used to go to my mother's, so it would be my uncle, my mother's brother, who lived up in Aberdeen.
Yeah.
And we would go there in the summertime, and it was, I mean, it's miserable. Aberdeen, right? I mean, it's, wuthering heights and, raining and windy and, gray and, the whole, I mean, it's, it's just Aberdeen, right? Yeah. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I don't know why, but it was, you were inside all the time, but I absolutely I loved Aberdeen.
No, it's funny, isn't it, how we are as humans, where we like to travel to where the things are different, and those people are looking at us going, why are you here? I'd rather be in California.
Yeah, exactly.
That sounds perfect. So, and I mean, the thing is I think if we were to be drinking these drinks, if you were looking for your reposado in a nice part of Scotland, I think they'll be saying, I think you mean a whiskey.
The finding reposado in Scotland is probably a task hard enough, right?
I think they'll be telling you to drink the local whiskey. So, so we're enjoying these drinks, and we're looking at
shut your head.
We're looking at the windswept summer that is in Scotland. What would we be talking about?
Well, what's on my mind is in a word, details. It's funny. I was having a conversation with a client recently that we're currently and started a content audit with, and it reminded me of my hatred for flossing. But here's the thing. I hate, but it's not the flossing part that I hate, by the way. It's the time, right? Yeah. I always think of it as such a waste of time. I'm like, I've got better things to do. Can't I just brush my teeth and save the 5 minutes or 7 minutes that I'm going to spend flossing? Yeah. And I went to the dentist, and the dentist, and this is after flossing for some time, where I had actually forced myself to do it. And the hygienist basically turned to me and said, "Hey, somebody's been flossing." Ooh. And I realized, after having a very pleasant teeth cleaning for the first time in, maybe 20 years, that there was an ROI there. There was an ROI for actual flossing. So I still don't love it, but I do it now much more regularly because the benefit, I can see it. And it reminded me of this content audit, because one of the things that we discovered, so this company basically had produced, blog posts and ebooks and podcasts and web. I mean, they've been creating content for, a couple of years, 3 years now. Yeah. And they had about 5,000 pieces all in. And when they began this journey, when they started their content marketing strategy, maybe, whatever it was, 2.5, 3 years ago, they actually thought it through and, put all the right pieces in place, and they put in a collaboration and calendaring tool, and it associates all this internal they went to the, trouble of getting a metadata structure where each of the assets was going to be tracked by persona and by what stage of the journey this content piece was for, the associated product that it would be, aligned with, the campaign that it was part of, the channel that it was going on. And they'd done all that, right? And the problem is that the team, as well as others that were contributing content to the process, they started in, and everybody was good with filling out those details every time they submitted a piece of content. And then it started to be like flossing, because they were under more and more pressure to get more and more out the door and more assets produced. And so they started skipping it. Right. They started skipping the metadata attributes. rationalizing, we'll come back to it later and fill it out, once a week, and we'll do all the assets. And of course, time never comes available, and they never did it. So then they sort of made a switch about a year and a half into their process and tried to make some of those meta fields mandatory so that they would make sure that it got filled out. But of course, then what happens is that in haste, everyone started just accepting the default, right? They just would select whatever, right? So for example, all was in the selection, for persona. So for some reason, about 90% of the assets got tagged as all, right? Which is a useless sort of meta tag. And so when we got to this content audit, the client says to us, hey, by the way, all these reports in this beautiful tool that we created, they're all useless because quite frankly, they're all tagged incorrectly.
Yeah. And
so it's interesting because I just sort of, I guess in a way rhetorically asked, well, wouldn't you have rather had 10%, 5,000 assets? Wouldn't you rather have had 10% fewer assets, but know exactly for whom they were produced, what stage of the journey? And she was like, yes, I get it. We should have done it. We should have paid attention to those details. And so the question becomes, how do you convince the team to actually do that bit? To actually pay attention to the quality of not just the content, but the content about the content, the metadata, the tagging, all of the things that help us understand, our production and our strategy and what we've been doing for the last 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, because I went out and researched it, there is actually some best practices in research here, which says you have to connect it. You have to connect those details frequently with the benefit of doing it. And that's what reminded me of my dentist's office, right? It wasn't until I went to the dentist that I connected those two concepts, because it's easy to go, we're building great content. We're doing awesome content. You just have to fill out those details more. And as it turns out, what people do is then they rationalize by saying, I'm already doing great content. I don't need to do this other thing, right?
Yeah.
And instead, we have to connect it to illustrating those reports, showing the benefit, really showing the return. Because I asked her, I said, when was the last time you showed the team any of the success of those things? And she said, oh, I never run those reports until I need them. It's like, yeah, we have to do that more frequently. So anyway, it was one of those things that I thought was just a great lesson for us in terms of connecting the benefit of doing the details with actually, with actually the team who's doing them.
Yeah, I love that analogy. And I think that in the, 2 decades that I've been working with web content management, before we even called anything content marketing, I guess, that's always been the challenge. Like metadata is like pulling teeth, trying to get people to understand that. And I've always, and this is where I think, as a bit of an aside, I think AI and stuff has got to come in and help us with this stuff. But, or machine learning, whichever one it is. But the thing is, we spend so much time trying to get to understand our audience and every little in detail about the persona and stuff like that. If we don't tag our content up, the moment we lose so much value. I mean, they may say, yes, this is a great piece of content. Yes, it's a great piece of content then and then, right? But it's not great if it's not tagged because we can't reuse it.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, just to sort of nail that point home, another client who had actually done the work and have actually done the thing, when we were starting our content audit, they simply sent us a spreadsheet. And they said, here's a data export of the last 3 years of our content efforts, which have all been tagged correctly and all great. And it was about a 2-hour exercise to go through and say, hey, listen, did you realize that over the last 3 years, 67% of your content has been for this one persona at this one stage of the journey? You're way overweighted there. And when people are complaining that there's not enough content at the, further down in the funnel, they're right. You haven't been producing that. And they just, they're so heads down working hard every day. They just don't see that. And so making a business case for why you want to change the editorial strategy or why you want to change the weighting of content or how you're producing it for one part of the buyer's journey over another, all of that information becomes incredibly important to be able to get to quickly and to be able to sort of see, because without knowing it, you just sort of have to guess.
Yeah.
And it's such an incredibly important thing and powerful thing to be able to say, look, here are the numbers, here's the data.
Yeah.
It's nice that we're getting, X amount of traffic from this part of the website, but you can see all of our content efforts are focused over here because they're just the loudest and bark the meanest for us to create content. And so we're focusing exactly in the wrong area, if we want to be more effective. Or we're producing too much content, or we're not producing enough content, or we're not producing the kind of content that our audience reacts to. Is made so much easier to track if we're tracking that internal information. And it's the details, right? It's just getting the details right.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that, Robert. And I'm jealously listening to you talking about a client that sends you a spreadsheet. And you can say within 2 hours, 67% of your content is for one persona. That sounds fantastic. So, and I love the idea that we can make the analogy to flossing. I think that resonates with anybody, and anybody that's been paid a compliment by their hygienist, Robert, deserves praise. So well done there. And so that's great. Thank you very much. And where would people find other thoughts such as this from you, Mr. Rose?
They would find that probably on our website, which is contentadvisory.net.
And when people spin the dial on the interwebs, they would find you where?
Oh, social media. What am I going to do? Twitter. I'm on Twitter. I'm finding a new I won't say love, but I'm finding a new for Twitter. Robert_Rose is my Twitter handle there, and I've been spending a little more time there lately. And then, of course, on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I find with Twitter, lists is what saves me at Twitter, because you can just curate the madness a bit better. I think with lists, you can't do that on LinkedIn, but I like the lists.
And the content's getting better too, I think.
That just depends on who you hang out with.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely true.
Well, thank you very much, Robert. And may I, as this is going, this episode will go out on Saturday. May I wish you a happy birthday for Monday, please, sir?
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And will I see you next week here in the bar?
Oh, you will. As usual, I'm gonna head back up into the air vent now and sort of make my way for the weekend.
All right, I'll see you then. Thank you very much. Cheers.
You got it.
Thank you, Robert. I'm sure if you've had anything to do with content, you'll know that challenge of metadata and tagging and all that stuff. And what a great analogy of flossing. Love that. So that's a wrap on episode 68 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thanks again to Jeff, Julia and Robert. I really appreciate their time and for them to share their insight. So please check out their links in the show notes, follow them and share their work. You can find the show notes at rockstarcmo.fm, where you can also find all our previous episodes. But most of all, thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting jukebox, selecting our track and jiving along with us. Let me know what you think. Please leave a rating or review, or just keep listening. I'm glad you're here. Next week, Jeff Clark returns. I'm looking forward to a chat with Margie Agin, an award-winning B2B marketer. And as you've heard, Robert Rose will be back in our virtual Rockstar CMO bar. Until then, I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and I hope you'll join us again next week here at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Christy Heiler hosts a fantastic podcast called Own It. Christy, tell us more about the show.
Own It is all about celebrating women and non-binary advertising agency owners. We talk about buying out of the Boys Club of Advertising because less than 1% of ad agencies are owned by women.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find the podcast at untilyouownit.com. We're also on the Marketing Podcast Network at marketingpodcast.net. And of course, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.